Again, for those of you who are online, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Swad, I work for CoDA. Welcome to our first high-level roundtable on the initiative. We have launched the initiative on 19 of this month. A lot is happening behind closed doors, of course. We need to prepare for us to come out. But it is in CoDA's way of doing things to facilitate dialogues and debates that are structured. We do consult extensively. We consult stakeholders that we feel are relevant for the work we are doing. And at every step, we do go back. We go out, we confront our ideas with theirs, and we see what survives. And we do not have an ego. We're not trapped by institutional history that doesn't fit us. We're not bound by donors' demands. We do take pride in saying what we take up remains independent and it remains very African, if anything, by way of making sure that African interests are actually what we bring to the fore. So I am here in my capacity as a secretary of the task team. I am going to facilitate this conversation because my chair, Professor Godwin Osahaye Bazwaye, Chief Medical Director of Igbinedion University Teaching Hospital, Okada, is my chair. In the context of the task team, I am secretary, he's the chair, he guides me, I respond. So we are going to do that here too. But by way of making sure that we take the views and the concerns of anyone else out there, we are going to start these conversations. We're going to build it from ground up. We're going to make sure that we attend to what we need to attend to, not superficially, not with unreasonable or unrealistic deadlines. We will take the time we need to make sure that the consensus and the necessary coalition behind this is actually built. So it's about slowly and surely building the capacity we need to produce, to develop and manufacture vaccines on this continent. It's about manufacturing. Until we manufacture our own vaccines, we will not have solved, because to get to the manufacturing, you must have complied and did everything else that comes before. And because it's going to be done there, we will have a vaccine, but to get it in the arms of our people, the second part will be also done, because our private sector is already in. That's how we see this. So without further ado, I would like to present my chair, Professor Bazwaye. Please, you have the floor to present what the initiative is about.
Thank you very much. As chair to the tax team, I want us to quickly introduce ourselves first before we start talking. So I want the members of the panelists to please introduce themselves. I'll start with, from my right.
My name is Ken Ayere, former Bureau Chief, News Agency of Nigeria, Southern and Central Africa. I'm co-moderating with the Executive Director of CoDA.
Let's put our hands together for him. My name remains Professor Godwin Osahaye Bazwaye. I'm the Chief Medical Director of Igbinedion University Teaching Hospital. I'm also a consultant hematologist and a stem cell transplantologist.
My name is Philip Onyebujo. I'm an infectious diseases expert and an immunogeneticist. I was the former advisor on technical matters to the executive director of the Africa CDC. I was also head of the laboratory programming for WHO in the African region, but I'm now an independent consultant. working with CoDA. Thank you.
I am Dr. Amenia Asfour. I think we are two ladies here on the panel. I represent the voice of the private sector of Africa. As the head of the African Business Council, the premier voice of private sector, I am also a pediatrician. So scientific research is very, 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 very important to all of us. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, we have three more colleagues joining us online. Dr. Amit Taker. Dr. Amit Taker is online. Amit, can you hear us? Can you say something?
Madam Moderator, if it is clear, let me also introduce myself. My name is Dr. Amit Thacker. I am the Executive Chair of Africa Health Business and the President of the Africa Healthcare Federation, which is the voice of the private sector in healthcare, and I'm very delighted to witness this session earlier that I saw sitting here in Nairobi. Thank you.
My name is Udoma Mendie. I'm a professor of pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical microbiology, and also consultant on quality, particularly for biologics and steroid dosage forms, University of Lagos.
Welcome, sir. We're really happy to have you. It's the first time you're engaging the platform. So welcome to the coalition.
Thank you.
Professor Mutambara.
My name is Arthur Mutambara, Professor of Electrical Engineering, specializing in robotics, mechatronics, and artificial intelligence. I'm also a former Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe.
My name is Sylvain Boko. I'm a professor of economics, formerly of Wake Forest University, North Carolina. Also in my recent past, the principal advisor on development planning and statistics for the UN Economic Commission for Africa. And I am currently on this panel serving as a senior advisor to CoDA. Thank you.
Privileged to have approval from the Chancellor, Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Sawari Benedion, the Isama of Benin, and also the Deputy Chancellor, Chief Lucky Igbenedion, for the approval for us to collaborate with CoDA. I think what we're trying to do is to provide the academic and then the research environments needed for us to have the dream of having an African vaccine. And as I keep saying, everyone needs vaccine. From when you are born, you are given some vaccines. Also too, in childhood, you have some vaccines. And once you also grow up, some of us are asked to take hepatitis. So the vaccine intake for Africans is enormous. So we're looking at the fact that COVID-19 is an eye-opener. And it means that we need to wake up as Africans. Apart from the fact that we're talking about Africans now getting less than 1% or 2% of the entire vaccines that is being distributed worldwide. We have, even living with us, a lot of diseases that needs vaccine. Africa spends over 1.5. Yes, Africa spends more than $1.5 billion yearly in procuring vaccines. The question is, why would we as Africans continue to rely on exportation of vaccines when we have what it takes to actually produce, distribute, and market these vaccines? So I think, as I keep saying, whenever you wake up is your morning. We have just woken up, and we must continue to pursue this agenda with CoDA and all stakeholders to ensure that we can provide vaccines for Africa. So we are setting up a center of excellence, not for Edo people, not for Nigerians, but for Africans, to ensure that Africans get what it takes to do research in other diseases like malaria, Ebola, and also to plan for the future. COVID COVID-19 is just the beginning. We may have another pandemic. It could be another virus. Where would Africa be when we have another pandemic of another disease? So I think this is a time for us as Africans to wake up. And in summary, as I said, the Chancellor and the Deputy Chancellor has made it possible for us to have the enabling environment. And IUTH and IU is prepared to collaborate with Africans to ensuring that we provide vaccines for Africans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. This is part of a series of webinars we started actually Saturday and yesterday. We keep asking ourselves, because at the end of the day, for some reason, this continent got itself into the business of consuming anything that is produced out there. We consume ideas, definitions, arguments that do not make sense to us, but we still consume them, consume products, vaccines, anything. Here are a group of Africans, and not least an Obasanjo and an Igbinedion of this world telling you, I don't understand why this is demystified. We have to demystify standards. The continent doesn't have standards. We cannot drive home the standards that are not here. What does it really take? How much would it take? Who should be there? We're just going to answer to these three questions for a while and then come up with it. So what does it take? What does it take, Dr. Philip?
It's a sterling opportunity for Africa. What has happened here is something that we need to celebrate. What does it take? What does it take? For the first time in pushing a major health program, we're seeing the private sector come together with the public sector to facilitate an incredibly important program for the health of Africa and the health security of Africa. What is absolutely amazing is that we didn't get here earlier, because I've said this in several seminars recently. Africa is gifted with the most diverse genetic material on the planet. And so we have candidates and targets for both medicines and vaccines that just require research and development. So manufacture should have been a logical step in terms of our response and our capabilities. So it's okay that we're at least starting, and we have the wherewithal to do it. What does it take? It also takes the coming together of various components of Africa, because it can't be done alone. So we need, as Africans, to come together and say, this is our security. Let's do it. Be it regional collaboration, be it countries within regions, etc. We need to do it. So let me stop there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Philip. Dr. Udoma, what does it take in your view? What does it take to come up with a vaccine? What else does it take?
The core area, based on my experience, what it takes is our will. I don't think even money can stop us from moving forward. It is the will. And if you look around, even based on the pharmaceutical manufacturing, the basic pharmaceuticals, we are not there. We are still in the infancy because of the will to move up. Until we upgrade ourselves and look at that we can also get to industrial level to manufacture. That confidence in us must be awakened. And to me, that is the key. Until we can get to that level of summing up courage that even if we fail, we can also overcome. That is the critical point that we frog leap into the realm of industrialization. That is the key. We must be confident that we can do it and not thinking that we will be laughed at by so advanced economists. Thank you very much.
Bless you. I like the passion. So far, there is one have and one have not. We have the genes to come up with candidates. We don't have the confidence, the mindset, and the will, because we are not even attending to other basic pharmaceutical, let alone vaccine. But numbers, you said money. The economist is here, Professor Boko. What are we talking about? You crunch numbers day in, day out for 20 years. What does it mean now?
I was in fact thinking as you were talking that in order for us to cultivate the type of independence that we are talking about, in order for us to truly create a self-owned industry of vaccine production on the continent, we must also be willing to put up the resources that will be required to start the process, because this is not going to be something that we will continue to wait for resources to come from elsewhere in order to allow us to be able to engage in the initiative. So to the extent that we are serious about this, we must, as a continent, be able to mobilize the resources. And to mobilize resources, it means that we have to be out there talking to the private sector, talking to the foundations, talking to the sovereign wealth funds. I'm talking about innovative resource mobilization strategies that would allow us to collect and to bring together a collective effort, financing efforts, in order to start this, and also to be able to give that confidence that the professor is talking about to the private sector, to see in this an opportunity as a business venture, an opportunity to say, yes, I'm contributing to something that is going to promote health, that is going to prevent death, but at the same time, I'm making money doing it. In other words, there has to be a certain incentive that would bring the private sector to the table and to remain at the table and be participants in this process. So from my perspective, that is what it would take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will need to innovate in the way we raise domestic resources, even in domestic resources. But it cannot go without generating the demand. Private sector reacts to demand. Dr. Asfour, it's your business to uphold that. You are the chair of the African Business Council, the only women champion of the African Free Trade Agreement and the boosting into African trade. That entire infrastructure, we built an institution. Your institution was the last one to come, the African Business Council. Private sector, why haven't they pinched in so far? It wasn't important to them? Were they waiting for an initiative of this nature to make the case to them? Why couldn't they find the case?
Well, thank you very much, because as the voice of the private sector, I tell you, private sector needs all the collaboration, the public-private sector, because we all know that scientific research and technology is a long-term investment. So if financial institutions let anybody go to a bank and tell them, please finance scientific research, nobody will finance scientific research. We need to change the mindset that scientific research is the most important pillar for development. So we need the collaboration of the financial institution, the policies. I always call it the triad of empowerment. It depends on 3 pillars: the people, the policy, and the product. For the people, you need to change the mindset of people that, oh, science is away from us. Scientific research is our cause. We have to build the capacity of our scientific health professionals, our healthcare professionals. We need to train them. We need to give them all the incentives. This is for our people. For our policy, the government and the public sector should really incentivize the scientific research, investment in scientific research. If there is anything that needs incentives, so it is scientific research and technology. The policies should be geared. There is a decision summit of African Union so that there are at least 3% of GDP should be geared towards scientific research and technology. Only 3 countries on the continent that have realized this. We need to see how the policy, how the public sector is joining efforts with the private sector. And the third pillar, I call it the product, which now we need to have a vaccine. This vaccine should be competitive, should be standard, should be quality, and should originate from the African soil. As Chief Lucky has said in his speech, we need really to replicate this initiative among all our African continent. We need to partner with other universities within the continent. Only yesterday there was an initiative in Egypt that the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research with the private sector have already, with the Ministry of Health, have already realized that they are going to manufacture a local vaccine in Egypt. So we should be collaborating. The 54 countries under the umbrella of African Union should make a mapping exercise. What is existing on the continent? How can the private sector support? The private sector can only invest and give money when we really have a solid ground, when we understand that there is a good incentives, there is a good policy, because now vaccination, right now in the whole world there is only 7 vaccines that is approved by WHO. Yet, till now, not all those vaccines you can travel with them. So, let alone that now Africa have less than 2%. So, if we want really the collaboration of the private sector, which is already happening here, happening in Egypt, we need to join efforts and finance the scientific research and technology and finance the private sector to make this mission.
Thank you, Doctor. So, health is a business, agriculture is business. Is Amit online? Amit Thakur, are you with us now? Amit is a brother of mine who is Kenyan. He built the largest network of business and government alike, providing them a platform to converse regularly. They have been trying to move the lines of policies, very strict, very constraining for the private sector. They don't trust one another. Government and private sector don't talk. So he has been trying to broker that talk but Prof. Mutambara, it's about people. It has been, it is, and it will always be about people, self-determination. Can Pan-Africanism alone, and the fact that we feel strongly that we are in a situation where we are still beggars, we're begging for vaccines. COVAX is nothing but charity to me. For those of you who thought that they came up with something scientific, it is not. It's whatever is left over that comes to this continent, and these are the only vaccines, with the exception of South Africa. Nobody else bought vaccines, everybody receives. So, Prof, would you be able to bring back the experts who are highly paid, whether they're Africans or non-Africans, to come to the continent if it's about people? What is the appeal?
What does it take? What does it take? It takes Africans working together as one bloc. What we've done today in Nigeria is proof of concept, but the agenda is Pan-African. The agenda is Africa. Keep your eyes on the prize. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. For you to unlock the economies of scale on the continent, you must give up on something. You must give up on some elements of national sovereignty so that you embrace regional sovereignty, so that you embrace continental sovereignty. There's no such thing as a free lunch. If you want Africans to work together as a bloc, you must be able to say, I'm an African first, a citizen of ECOWAS second, a Nigerian third. I know you don't want to hear that, but that's what you must psychologically prepare yourself as an African if we are going to work together to unlock the economies of scale that are required for us to manufacture vaccines on the continent. Count two, African money. How do we unlock private sector money to manufacture vaccines? Governments on the continent must create an enabling environment for the private sector to invest in R&D, for the private sector to manufacture vaccines. The government itself must invest in healthcare. We cannot at all depend on donors in the West. We must spend whatever number it is, 15% of our budgets on healthcare. That is the only way we can manufacture vaccines on the continent. But more importantly, for the private sector to play a role, there must be clarity on the return on investment. If I put in $1 million as the private sector, how much am I going to make? So the scientists and the business people must work together to come up with the mathematics that will tell us the return on investment in R&D, the return on investment in manufacturing. That is what it takes. Yes, we have experts in America, experts in China, African experts all over the world. We can attract them on the continent if we are working together as a continent. We can attract them if our private sector is investing in the R&D and manufacture of vaccine. And also, confidence is very important. Our scientists, our doctors, our pharmacists, do they have the confidence that they can do R&D? Do they have the confidence that they can manufacture? Or all they have is the capacity to do maintenance, the capacity to do service? The African must have the confidence to say, I can do R&D, I can manufacture. And by the way, as I conclude, you and I, ordinary people, do you have the confidence to say, here's an Ubuntu vaccine, I'll take it instead of Pfizer. Here's the Ubuntu vaccine, I'll take it instead of Johnson & Johnson. Some of our people are colonized. We must decolonize the mind of the African. We must decolonize the mind of the scientist. As Biko taught us, the most powerful weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Thank you very much.
You always have ovations, Professor, but we will still need to attend to the question of, are the scientists and the experts listening to us as well? Because we know that policymakers and private sector are not talking. With private sector, policymakers and experts talk at some point, we will see. If my brother Ernest Ariete was here, he's the Secretary General of ARWA, the African Research Universities Alliance. That's an alliance of 17 public research universities on the continent. They're already attending to this. We do hope, and this is another call to my brother, Chief Lakino Sahai Igbinedion, Deputy Chancellor of Igbinedion University and Igbinedion University Teaching Hospital. We also, sir, needed to network the private universities. That's what Amani is saying, because public universities suffer from some of the ills. Private universities do not have the same, but if they bring together, they will probably be able to tone down what blocks them and bring about a proper research as well. So this is another call. Since you already delivered on everything we have asked you, maybe we can carry on and try to reach that. Sorry, Amit, you're here, please. Amit, we've been trying to answer the same question from a variety of perspectives. I hope you are hearing us. What does it take? What does it take from the health business perspective?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Suad, it's a really pleasure to join you again. What it takes is partnership and leadership. In my opinion, if we mix these two ingredients, we will probably move in a phased approach where investments close to $20 billion have already been cited towards making vaccine systems available. We know that we will need close to $350 billion in the long term to make us self-sufficient. Now let me explain the 6 countries that we've been talking to so closely: Morocco, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Rwanda, and South Africa, among many others. These have foundation under which we can go through stepwise approach for universal access to equitable vaccines through a model called phase 1 distribution, which is fill and finish, and then setting up structures to start manufacturing in the long-term basis. If we manage to fill and finish, we can triple our supply within the first year. If we fill and finish with all these countries participating, within 4 years, we will have reached more than 5 times the number of people that we want to reach for vaccines, not only for this particular pandemic of COVID-19, but for many childhood illnesses and other viral infections. I would like that, since private sector is ready and they believe this is a viable opportunity, we need social connection with the government to provide us the enabling environment. This enabling environment is what provided India 30, 40 years ago an environment which included incentives of doing business, incentives around waiving unnecessary tax and duties, incentives around export compensation. If those costs are reduced, we can become extremely competitive around our fill and finish model. So structurally, if we have special economic zones and we have export processing zones that create the mathematics around what Aspen might be doing in South Africa, why can't we replicate it in at least 4 or 5 sites? So what it takes, I would suggest, is partnership and leadership with incentives aligned with the government and private sector being on the same page. I think together what CoDA is doing is to build trust, is to build exactly this partnership and leadership, and totally you have the full support of the private health sector here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are really far behind schedule. If I was to summarize what happened on this platform, it seems that we have what it takes. It seems that this pandemic provided us with a viable opportunity. It seems that the intermediate solutions, fill and finish models that we could already ride on exist. The leadership and partnership at state level seem to be already on the move. The 6 countries are already collaborating. Private sector confidence must be built. Standards and experts out there must be, we have to drive them home. Now, the same figure comes up, 300, 350 million, 400 to make us self-sufficient. Well, if that's all it takes, I don't think we have a problem, because for those of you who were there at the beginning of this, you heard the Professor Benedict Orama. They have already raised 2 billion through one facility in the middle of the pandemic to attend to solutions, and that was not to attend to our own problems, merely to get by. So if we can, through one financial institution, raise 2 billion to attend to things that we are not even benefiting that much from, other than, I think that $500 million shouldn't be that difficult for us if we're thinking right, if we know what we are doing. So maybe, Ken, you can help me with the questions. Ken Ayere, maybe you can help me with the questions and answers. Another 10 minutes before we close. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary, Director, CoDA. Before I take questions from the floor, I just want to also ask this question, and that will be speaking the minds of the ordinary person on the street who would have been following the process so far. And I'm sure they would want to know if there is a place for traditional medicine in this fight against COVID-19, either now or in the future. I'm sure the CMD or Dr. Onyebujo can help us there.
Thank you very much, Ken. It's a very good question, absolutely critical and vital. In the conceptualization of the Center of Excellence that His Excellency Lucky Gunedion mentioned in his address, part of what we're thinking about in driving the R&D process is to also begin to look at phytochemical research. I'm sure the professor of pharmacology there will probably have more to say about this, but to inculcate phytochemical research as an entry point into identifying particular targets that might facilitate medicines and vaccines, alongside what I mentioned. So you have an incredible array of phytochemicals in Africa. You have an incredible array of genes in Africa. So it presents a massive opportunity. So the answer is yes, it is being considered appropriately. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Philip. Obviously, as we said, we are trying to set up a center of excellence, and everybody is welcome on board. We're going to be looking at both the traditional, as long as we have some scientific basis. I want to also say too, for example, in sickle cell. I always believe too that nature has a way of placing something in an environment where you have the same problem. And so sometimes you may need to also look inwards. What we're saying is that following international standards, everything will be looked into. And we are certain that we'll look at some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. We'll also hear from Professor.
Yes, actually, Africa is not totally new to vaccines. And I always want to say this. That's why I say confidence. Traditionally, they involve, for instance, when people, some of those things, they use water that is left in a tree trunk and administer it for infective problems. Of course, you know, they might not be able to get to the advanced science. But of course, that slurry contains a lot of microbes, which of course can share some antigen to a large degree and help them. The snake, using boiling all these snake heads or dog heads and taking the slurry is all a form of vaccination, because the antigen from this, of course we understand the issue of the antidote to a poison is part of the poison. And based on that, they'll be able to manage a lot of these infective agents. So traditional medicine has a very strong contribution, and we need to open up and then try to get closer to them to tap all this.
Thank you very much, Professor. We are far behind on time. I would have loved to take more questions from the floor. But what we can do is write out our questions and pass them on to the team through the PRO of the Gunedion University, and these questions will be answered. So I thank you all very much, and back to the Executive Director of CoDA.
Well, mine will be very fast. We will probably just need to do what we have been told here, and that alone will get us a long way. We will shoot for the moon, and if we get it to Timbuktu, it's good enough. So we start somewhere. We started in Okada. Let's see where the journey takes us. With these few words, I think it has been a rich 2 days. I would like to give the floor to a senior brother of mine for the votes of thanks. Professor Mutambara.
I think as we close, we must show respect and thanks to those who have made this event possible. There are three categories of people I would want to thank as we close. The first one are the partners. CoDA, the teaching hospital, and the university. These two partners, two sets of partners, are the ones who made this possible. On top of the university, we have the Sama of Benin. We're very grateful for the vision and the inspirational leadership of the Esama of Benin. We want to say thank you, Esama. Thank you, Chief, for being a great leader. Would want to thank the Vice Chancellor, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, the former governor, all who are part of the university side of the partnership. And of course, the teaching hospital with our Chief Medical Director here. These are the people who made this possible. On CoDA, we want to thank the board of CoDA, in particular, former President Obasanjo for the leadership of CoDA. And also our sister here, the executive director of CoDA. We thank you so very much for making all this possible. That is the first area of our thanks. We go to the second category, the speakers we had this morning, the education we got this morning, the wisdom we got this morning from our speakers. We must thank our speakers this morning for sharing with us and showing us that it can be done. Africans can work together and produce a vaccine. So I want to thank all our speakers this morning in the earlier session for what they brought to the table. And also this panel, the last panel, we are very grateful for your participation. The last category for our thanks goes to the people of Africa. All of you here, we are grateful that you are here. We are so thankful for your participation. In particular, the young people. Young people, today all these old people, old men and women, we're talking about your future. You must own the future. Don't accept the dictum that says young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Reject that. Young people are the leaders of today. So all the young people in the house, we are so grateful for your participation. This is your future. We are too old to own the future. The future belongs to you. We are grateful to our young people. In terms of summary and message, this initiative is about manufacturing. We must manufacture vaccines on the continent. Number two, there has to be private sector money. How do we unlock private sector money to do manufacturing of vaccines on the continent? Those two pillars are so critical. Of course, we need an ecosystem approach. Of course, we need an all-stakeholder approach. But fundamentally, we are talking R&D for vaccines. We're talking the manufacture of vaccines. And to do that, we have to depend on African money. He or she who pays the piper calls the tune. We must depend on African money, in particular, the private sector. The private sector must be sender to this initiative. I thank you so very much for this opportunity to close this session.